Hi, I'm Go-Go Amy, and I am the producer and founder of the Pretty Things Peepshow, and I'm also the burlesque dancer in the show. So how Pretty Things came about was I had been doing burlesque shows for a while, and I got hired by a sideshow, and I was really into how pretty burlesque shows were. I loved like all the costumes, all the glamour, all that stuff, but a burlesque show, everyone's basically doing the same act. You know, everyone's like, by the third girl, you're like, wonder if she's gonna take her clothes off too. You know, so it's kind of, it gets the audience sort of, like the excitement kind of dies down after a little while because you just get desensitized to the fact that you're doing the same act over and over and over again. And then when I joined this sideshow, I was really excited because all the acts were so different. You know, there was like sword swallowing and fire eating, and you just never knew that. I could feel the audience's excitement because you just didn't know what the next person was gonna do when they walked on stage. But there was definitely a big gross out factor to it. You know, there was like a lot of kind of like in your face, scary sideshow stuff. And I was sort of like, when I got it together to put out my own show, I was like, I really want to do the pretty of burlesque with the variety of sideshow. So it's kind of like this new genre of entertainment called vaudeville, which is like hot broads doing vaudeville. And that's what the Pretty Things Peepshow is. And I do burlesque in the show. I make all my own costumes, and then I also do all the booking, promoting, general wording, paying for a lot of car repairs. You know, all the wonderful and amazing things that go along with being on the road. So yeah, I'm kind of like the mom and the naked lady. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So since you started this, did you ever think you would be where you're at now? Did you think it would take off?
Michigan? Oh, girl, it's actually really nice here. Yeah, I mean, I kind of didn't really have any idea what I was doing when I first started. You know, I was just like, I wanted to do burlesque full time for, you know, like as a job to make my living, and there was no way to do that. There was only these little shows, weekly, monthly, and I could book myself as a guest star a zillion times, but there was no way to consistently work. There was no show that existed that would employ me full time. So my theory on life is if it doesn't exist, then you can just make it, you can just do it. So that's another reason why I put the show together, was I was just like, I want a full-time job and it doesn't exist, so I'll just make it exist. But I didn't really know how crazy it was going to be, how busy I was going to be, how stressful it was going to be. But this year has been like the best year for us, and we kind of went through 2 years of just me kind of like trying to figure out how to work in the entertainment industry from a business standpoint. Like, I already knew how to take my clothes off on stage, that I was good at, but learning all the different ways of like how to book, how to promote, marketing, all these things that, like, you know, I didn't know how to do. And it took 2 years for me to sort of get on my feet, and now I feel like we've got a really solid cast. The performers in the show are so good, and they're so much fun to be around. You know, so the show in and of itself is like the best it's ever been, and we've all together worked so hard on just like making it happen that, yeah, I didn't know where we were going, but I'm really happy that we got here.
Yeah. So. That's great. So obviously, besides like the stress of everything, what were some of the things kind of in the beginning stages that stood in your way that maybe, you know, held you back or made you hesitate doing this?
Well, I mean, not knowing what we were doing was hard. That was definitely, or just sort of figuring out as we went along. That was kind of difficult. The other thing that was difficult for us is because we kind of accidentally created a new genre of entertainment, and we also accidentally created a touring market for it. Like, there had never been, you know, a show like ours that wasn't like, you know, a huge like Cirque du Soleil. Like, there wasn't like a DIY show that was traveling around the country like we were. So we basically like kind of started all these things that didn't really exist. And, you know, the first year and a half of booking, I mean, I still even get it now. I try and describe the show to a booking agent who just books bands, and they're like, you do what? With who? You've how many? Like, it's the concept of what we do. To some people, they just don't get it, and they just don't respond to me. They're just like, I just book bands, I don't want to deal with anything new. So being different and weird is like a double-edged sword, because when we do roll through town, we're not like a band. You don't have to have heard us on the radio to come to our show. If you hear like boobs and fire and midgets, you're probably going to show up. But if you're a booking agent, you hear boobs and fire and midgets, and you're like, huh? Like, how do I market this? What would you even charge for a ticket for that? So we fought against ourselves, I think, a lot in the beginning of just like people not understanding what we did and not having any track record, you know? So we did a lot of shows. We did a lot of shows the first few years, and we still do. So now that we have, you know, somewhere between 300 and 400 shows under our belt in the last 2.5 years, now people don't understand us, but they're like, well, I don't know who you are, but those 300 people do, so I guess we'll take a chance on you. So that was definitely a hard thing to overcome, was just being us.
Yeah.
And not having a scene that we could follow, like having no one to compare us to. Like when you're a band and you book, you say, oh, we sound like so-and-so. You know, we have this much of a draw. We have, you know, like there's all these nuts and bolts that people who are going to hire you want to know, and we didn't have that because, you know, we've fire, boobs, midgets, and, you know. So, yeah. But, you know, now that we have a following and now that we've been around for a while, it's actually what used to hurt us now helps us. So.
Yeah. That's great. So personally for you, how did you fall into burlesque, or did you take conscious steps to get there, or how'd that begin for you?
Yeah, I mean, I started off as a go-go dancer. Started as a go-go dancer in New York City when I was in college, just dancing for bands and just like I just kind of wanted to play dress up for a living, and I couldn't really quite figure out how you could do that, but I just believed it was possible. And so I did all these other, like, just worked in nightclubs doing all kinds of wacky jobs, and you know, one day someone was like, oh, you wear sparkly outfits and you take off your clothes, so you're a burlesque dancer. And I was like, oh, okay.
Is that what I am?
I am. Sure, like as long as the checks don't stop coming in.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call me is fine. And then the whole burlesque scene kind of like got big in the last, you know, sort of, I don't know, 7-8 years. And it sort of grew up around me, and I was just like, oh, I guess I do this now. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I didn't just wake up and be like, I'm going to be an old-timey strip-teasing lady today. You know, it just sort of happened. Like, I was just like, how do I incorporate alcohol and rhinestones into, and not having to wake up before noon, into a career? I think that there's something to be said about, like, trying to do something new is really hard when you start, but once the momentum gets going with it, it almost, like, runs itself. So, like, live through the first couple years that totally suck and keep doing it, and then after a little while, like, it'll just sort of take off. Like, you just have to kind of like keep rubbing two sticks together until a spark happens, and then, you know, and then you're on fire.